Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Upriver Crawfish. I'm your host, Sankar. Today is May 29th, 2022. Today, I'll be reacting to Scott Ritter's response to criticism for his 180-degree turn in analysis. Before I go to the reaction video, I want to go over one of the articles that Scott Ritter wrote that caused the criticism. And I did listen to one of those interviews in which he did pretty much a 180-degree turn. So, one of these articles on energy intelligence that he did on May 18 is entitled Ukraine War Has No End in Sight. There are a couple of points here that Ritter made. One, some problematic points. One, he stated that the war has expanded in scope and scale beyond the capabilities of the Russian military resources originally allocated. Okay, he's speculating, and we all do the speculation because again, we use open source data. We this we don't have all the information, so we use open source data and go from there. So he's speculating that the Russians haven't planned adequately, and that somehow the war has gone into a phase in which the Russians might need to then change and maybe allocate more resources. He doesn't know that. That's the first place. But for me, one of the most problematic area was in where he said he speculates that there was a massive intelligence failure. That he said perhaps the greatest contributor is what appears to be a massive Russian intelligence failure over pre-war assessments that organized resistance by Ukraine would be limited and easily overcome. Instead, the Russians were met by an organized, capable, and determined Ukrainian military that has shown great resilience in defending against Russian attack. Instead of a quick campaign of less than a month, I don't know where he got that from, Russia found itself in a drawn out fight that required its military to alter its approach, pulling back from supporting attacks against Kiev and Odessa in favor of a more singular focus on eastern Ukraine. Now, he is by doing this, what he is claiming now, which is against what he said before. And even when we go to his reaction, you will see he pulled that back a little bit. He's claiming now that the Russians' operations against in Kiev around Odessa and especially in the Kiev region was probably a failure due to Russian military intelligence failure, a massive military intelligence failure. He doesn't know that, and this is U.S. talking points that he totally opposed before, and now he's claiming again this time. So he's going back against that it was a failure. So he is also implicitly saying that Russia had their assessment wrong, intelligence assessment wrong, and likely that they plan to this rosy intelligence assessment. That's not how intelligence works. You get the intelligence, and that's not even how military people plan. You plan for the worst case scenario. The Russians have planned for the worst case scenario, and that's why they did the operations in the way they did. Scott explained this before, but all of a sudden now he's going back on it. Those are the reasons. And then with no good explanation, logical explanation. That's why people have problem with him. He goes on to point out how uh, 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 it's a game changer in Europe because now people are training Ukrainian troops in their territory and NATO sending better weapons for Ukraine. How? There is no wonder weapon that NATO can send. What training? Ukraine had massive artillery before, and they were trained to NATO standards for 8 years. Russia, in a matter of 4 to 10 days, destroyed Ukraine's capabilities for waging offensive warfare in 10 days. They did that, destroy all of Ukrainian weapons. Let's show some of the weapons that Russia destroyed, some of the weapons that Ukraine is now asking for. So, if you look here, you will see 1,722 field artillery and mortars. So far, the M777 sent was about 118 total. Russia has destroyed Ukraine's own artillery. That's about 1,700. Multiple rocket launchers. Ukraine is now asking for HIMARS. How much they're going to send them, I don't know. Russia has destroyed a lot of them. Thanks. Russia have destroyed around 3,300 of them. Aircrafts, anti-aircraft missiles. These are strategic anti-aircraft missiles. These are missiles, the S-300 family, which is strategic long range. You got medium range, and you got I call it a short range. So they had an integrated air defense system. Russia destroyed that. So what's the difference now with America go and send something like Rapier, which is a short range, short to medium range weapon? I don't get it. So it is him making those change is not so much the problem. Is when he's making those change without logical explanations, when the logic does not follow. I think that's what people are talking about. So he's saying that Russia, one of the things he would say in his response is that the amount of money that the US has allocated is what makes this a game changer because it's a lot of money. Apparently, he's saying Ukraine doesn't have to change to, when they lose it or it breaks. Ukraine doesn't have to uh, uh, try to fix it. They can just go and buy new ones. Well, if you have to buy a new one, it takes time, right? For those new ones to come in. Apparently, you don't consider that. And if they come in, they get destroyed. Like the 1,700 that got destroyed before, like the 400 that got destroyed before, like the 3,000 number that got destroyed before. What's the difference? You're not able to launch counteroffensive operations in 10 days or 4 days because we know 4 days because the Mariupol loop was closed on day four. It was closed on day four. So if it was closed on day four, and on day four, Ukraine had no ability to launch a counteroffensive to break open Mariupol cauldron and save its men, that shows that their offensive capability was destroyed in 4 days. This is a military that was trained to NATO standards. This is another thing that is rampant in Scott's new analysis. NATO standards. Previously, he had pointed out that NATO is not does not have the capability or is not ready to fight Russia right now in a conventional war. But all of a sudden now, this NATO standards is going to fix everything. Apparently, NATO standards is now better than you than Russian standards. So these are some of the reasons that people are going up against Scott Ritter because this new analysis, unlike previous analysis where he explained things with logic, his new analysis lacks the logic, the rigors of logic, lacks it. Now, this is the reaction, the video of Scott Ritter's response to those criticisms, uh, and I will try to pick parts in there and go from there because it's very long. So I will try to pick parts to show why Scott Ritter's new analysis is wrong and people are rightly criticizing it. Now, people are speculating as to why he's making these, he has made these changes. And okay, maybe it's unfair to impugn his character, but people have to make assessments, especially when you have no logic that follows. You say one thing before, which you provided great logic, but then all of a sudden you're saying things now for which you didn't provide much logic. So anyway, let's begin.
It says recording. There we go. Okay.
Okay. So I'm here with Scott Ritter, and we are here to discuss his latest analysis that has drawn a bit of controversy from other analysts and commentators. I was very honored and thankful for Scott to agree to come on this platform and just kind of talk about his perspective of the controversy and of the detractors that are questioning his analysis and impugning his motives and things like that. But again, I don't want to do, I want to do very little bit of talking, as little talking as possible, and I want to listen to Scott try and explain from his perspective his thoughts about this the controversy and people disagreeing with his most recent analysis. So Scott, thank you again for coming on. Let me just let you go ahead and discuss. About a week ago, your analysis drew some ire. So, what are your thoughts on the people that are disagreeing with you and things like that? Can you kind of encapsulate the the whole controversy in your own words?
Sure. I mean, first of all,
Before I get into Scott Ritter, I want to talk about this guy. His channel is Billy Bob, so please go ahead and support him. And I haven't looked at his channel before, but just looking from his avatar, I think I can arguably roll with him. Anyways, so Billy Bob, from what I can tell, I don't know if that's his name or it's just his channel's name, but from what I can tell, it's kind of like me. We pay attention to this thing. We got information that we share with people, but we are not seasoned journalists. We don't know how to do this whole uh, 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 broadcasting thing. So we talk funny and stuff like that, but it's genuine. So for me, I already like the guy. As I say it, I tell people, I say, I have substance, I don't have style. I need to learn to get the style. That's what you're seeing there. You see his little nervousness with the camera and stuff. That's me as well. Uh, Talking on this thing is not natural to me, and I can tell it's not natural to Billy Bob. So that's kind of funny. I just wanted to point that out. But let's go now to Scott Ritter. I'm going to try to go to an area where I'll get down. We'll get down directly to business.
When I think I got a little bit of notoriety at the beginning of this by um, going against the grain that Ukraine was winning the war. I came out and I said, no, my take is that Russia is winning the war, that Russia is accomplishing its tasks, that Russia is inflicting more damage on the Ukrainians than they are on the Russians. Um, and then when the phase one, because when this war started, we didn't know there was a phase two. No one can sit here and say, I knew phase two was coming. It was phase one because that's all we got. We saw the Russians advancing on Ukraine with multiple axes. And we were all trying to put that into perspective. Why is Russia doing this? Why would Russia go in with 200,000 men, attack a force that has 600,000 men, flipping the 3-to-1 odds that you need to guarantee success in battle? Why would they do this? What is their purpose? Well, we got an insight when Russia said, phase one is over, phase two is beginning. And I said, okay, now this makes sense because Russia was applying maneuver warfare concepts, feints, diversions, fixing, etc., to prepare the battlefield to accomplish their primary objective of defeating the Ukrainians in the Donbass region, which is a
Okay, so let's go back now to what he said in that piece. One of the things he said was that there was it appeared there was a massive Russian intelligence failure over pre-war assessments that organized resistance by Ukraine will be limited. So that Russia now found itself, instead of going into a war where it's going to be done within a month, they find themselves in a drawn out fight. Okay, that's what he said in that piece. What he's saying here now is in direct contradiction to that, because in that piece, he pointed out that Russia had to change their strategy. So apparently, Russia went in, Ukraine bloodied them up so much that then Russia had to change their strategy and leave Kiev to go and focus on the east because of that intelligence failure. Well, that's the US, that was the US propaganda stuff that he was opposed to from the get go. He is now in this piece opposing what he wrote in his 180 degrees turn. He is now acknowledging that Russia had their plan. Russia went in with 200,000 men against 600,000 men, which would have put them on a disadvantage, but using maneuver warfare, doing feints, diversions, fixing, and stuff, were able to prepare the the battlefield for what they wanted, and then they are now going to achieve it. So apparently, it was not a massive military intelligence failure then. So they actually knew what they were doing. They did not go there looking for Ukraine to capitulate in 1 month. The Russians had already heard what the U.S. said, that they're looking to turn the place into Afghanistan and get Russia in a long, drawn-out fight that will make it weak. So the Russians didn't go in there thinking that everything Ukraine will capitulate in 1 month. So Scott Ritter is now going against his 180. These kind of inconsistencies is why people are then now impugning his motives.
Stated objective of Vladimir Putin and the Russian high command. But we also know that they wanted to do some other things. Again, I'm not making this up. This is what the Russians said. They said their objectives were denazification and demilitarization. They also said that this was part and parcel of a strategic objective of making Ukraine neutral, meaning not a member of NATO, and shaping events in Europe so that NATO would accept a new European security framework that took into account Russian national security considerations. Again, I'm not stating this. This is what the Russians said. Now, anybody who studies war should hopefully have read Clausewitz. It's sort of like 101. And
War is the continuation of politics
right from the start, we're taught
through another means.
war is an extension of politics by other means. What does that mean? It means that it ain't about winning the battle. It's not even necessarily about winning the campaign. It's about achieving the political objectives. That's called strategic victory. When the Russians started this special military operation, it's a special military operation for a reason. That has a specific legal term. It's not a war.
Another place here that Scott Ritter is going to show why his analysis is lacking is because he is now defining for the Russians what phase two is. Not even the US know what phase two is. Just as no one knew there was a phase two, no one knows if there's a phase three or phase four or what even phase two is. He's making an assumption of what phase two is. The Russians didn't even announce that.
As mobilization and bringing to bear everything you got to achieve your objectives. The special military operation is limited by the legal framework for which Russia justified this conflict, and that is collective preemptive self-defense under Article 51 of the United Nations Charter. That means that Russia can use that military force necessary to eliminate the imminent threat posed by Ukraine's military to the collective security encompassing Russia and Lugansk and Donetsk. Russia could shape the battlefield in a manner which made it more likely that they would prevail. That was phase one. But phase two is about accomplishing the stated task of liberating the can use that military force necessary to eliminate the imminent threat posed by Ukraine's military to the collective security encompassing Russia and Lugansk and Donetsk. Russia could shape the battlefield in a manner which made it more likely that they would prevail. That was phase one. But phase two is about a.
So Scott here is acknowledging that so far what he's seen in phase one was that Russia was shaping the battlefield for what they want to accomplish in phase two. Okay. So then again, it impugns his statement in the piece that there was a massive military failure, military intelligence failure, which led to Russia having to get out of Kiev and focus somewhere else. So just right here alone shows that Scott Ritter is now in opposition with himself. So the first phase of the operation is that Russia was indeed shaping the battlefield for the areas that they want to take care of. What did Russia do to shape that battlefield? Russia went used maneuver warfare to spread out Ukrainian troops, put them in different areas, did a feint into Kiev, and did diversions in the south, diversions in the north in Kharkov, all to be able to open up the east and handle their business in the east, so as to shape the battlefield for what they're going to do later. And how do we look at how are they how are their performance in that? We see that starting on day 4, when that loop around Mariupol was closed, the Ukrainians could not launch a counteroffensive to be able to break that loop. We see that the 40-mile column north of Kiev sat there and they were not even harassed. They were not, I mean, nobody even took a pellet gun to go and shoot at it. So Ukraine's ability to launch counteroffensive above the battalion level was disrupted within 4 to 10 days. This is, remember now, this is Ukraine that 8 years has been trained to NATO standard. All right. So Scott Ritter knows that now because the Russian announced that after it was finished. Okay. So the ship, the battlefield are coming to do what they need to do on the east and the south. Scott Ritter does not know because Russia has not announced it. Not even the US know. Heck, the US doesn't even know who the overall Russian commander is. They're speculating that it is some commander because of the units that the Russian used. But here's the funny thing, Russia has been cycling units from the different military districts. So the Western Military District has taken part in this, the Central Military District has taken part in this, and the Eastern Military District has taken part in this. So the US don't even know Russian operations security is top notch. Scott Ritter even understood this before. Let's continue.
Accomplishing the stated task of liberating the Donbass, of creating a land bridge that connects Crimea with Russia, and expanding Crimea so you secure water resources for Crimea. Russia's achieving this. It's masterful. Anybody that says it's not doesn't know what they're talking about. It's a stunning military victory that I
Yet you
believe
said it
will be
was a
studied
failure,
for some time now.
military intelligence failure.
Not
They
too many
didn't
people
know
understand what the truth
that
is on the
Ukraine was
ground
going
there.
to fight.
The Russians are going up against a defensive line that is as developed and fortified as any that's existed in the history of modern war. We're talking about interlocking defenses, concrete reinforced bunkers, trenches, artillery with pre-registered fires. The whole works is there, and the Russians are dismantling it piece by piece by piece. And they're maximizing enemy casualties, minimizing their own. Good. Now, the interview that has caused problems with people is an interview I believe I gave to Garland Nixon, together with Ray McGovern. And this is right after the United States did two things. One, Lend-Lease. The president signed into effect a Lend-Lease law. And to give you a brief history of that, Lend-Lease dates back to 1941, March, when Franklin Delano Roosevelt unleashed the arsenal of democracy in support of Great Britain, later the Soviet Union, and China, so that they could build up their military capability sufficient to defeat Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. It's a big ticket item. It's a big deal. And Congress breathed new life into this legislation and gave it to the president, which means that the United States is now in business of activating the arsenal of democracy in support of Ukraine against Russia. Anybody who doesn't understand that this is a fundamental game changer doesn't understand what I just said.
How is it
Now
a
we're going to put
game
some numbers.
changer? How is it a game changer? Let's take the land lease built in World War II with Great Britain and Russia. These were people, these were countries wherein their manufacturing capabilities were not halted by the Germans. The Germans couldn't just go and destroy their manufacturing capabilities. So, as the US supplied them with weapons and money and loan, they were able to build the capabilities up. Russia, the same. Russia is a big country, so a lot of their manufacturing were on pushed towards the east, so that even when the Germans invaded Russia, they still have many manufacturing capabilities on the east. Ukraine has none of these. It's this kind of sloppy analysis that just doesn't do justice to someone who was very thorough before, right? This is why people are impugning his motives. So basically, and from this year, the central point about why he's doing 180 is because of the amount of money that the U.S. has put into Ukraine's hands. So let's listen to him talk about that a little bit, and then I will come back and address that.
Numbers to this. Um, Prior to this special military operation taking place, the United States was providing between 100, 200, 300 million dollars of military aid to Ukraine per year. This was a mix of non-lethal aid, trucks, things of that nature, and lethal aid, javelin missiles primarily, and things of that, counter battery radars. And we viewed that as a lot of money. Hell, a president got impeached over it. I mean, big deal. Lots of money. Okay, now I'll give you another number. Russia in 2021 spent $43 billion on the totality of its defense budget. The totality of its defense budget. That's strategic nuclear arsenals, submarines, ships, aircraft, defense industry, and their regular army. $43 billion. From the start of this year until the start of May, basically 4 months, the United States has provided Ukraine either directly or we've allocated $53 billion worth of military assistance. That is $10 billion more than what Russia has spent on its military for an entire year. I'm a Marine, and maybe numbers don't come easy to me, but I'm just saying that if you don't think turning over $53 billion of military assistance has a meaningful impact on the battlefield, then I literally want to know what brand of dope you're smoking, because I want some. It's got to be good. Now, let's parse the numbers out, because I know people say, well, wait a minute, it's old stuff. Hell, I've been saying it's old stuff from day one. I've been saying don't worry about much of this stuff, because you're given a Vietnam era M113, there's not a Ukrainian in their military that knows how to repair that engine. Not one. And we didn't give them enough time to learn how to do that. So we've turned old equipment over with refurbished engines. What happens in combat to engines? They stop working. They break down. And if you don't have the mechanics to repair it, that becomes a death trap. And I've said that. You're condemning Ukrainians to die by sending over this old equipment. We've given them javelin missiles by the thousands, upwards of 8,000 of them. They're not the game winner that people said. It's not one shot, one kill. These are missiles that many of them date back to 1996, 1997, 1998, 1999. They're old. Javelins have a 10-year shelf life unless they've been thoroughly refurbished. But that refurbishment includes replacing the high explosive warhead, which they didn't do. So many of these missiles, even if they guide to the target, they go pop instead of boom. And the Russians don't even blink. A lot of the missiles don't even make it to the target because they release and the electronics haven't been upgraded. So they jam the aileron and the javelin spins out of control and goes off to who knows where. The same thing with the in-laws. 90%, the number, I got to back that number up. I'll check the number. It's a significant percentage of the in-laws who were sent to Ukraine has exceeded their shelf life. So they have the same problems. And we can go on. Even when we provide them new equipment, the M777 howitzer. You know what? It was made lightweight because they used titanium parts. Problem with titanium, it ain't nearly as flexible or malleable under combat conditions as aluminum. So it tends to crack. And unless you have replacement parts, spare parts, and people trained to maintain the howitzer. Ask anybody who's done any artilleryman who's done a rotation at the National Training Center what their online ready capability for their howitzers are after 4 weeks at NTC. And they're going to tell you, crap, everything breaks, everything's down. We got to pull it out. If we're not pulling our howitzers out of the line during the rotation, we're going to lose all combat capability. So it's a constant maintenance problem. And you don't train somebody with a train the trainer program, which is what we started with, on how to maintain this. So they get the howitzers, they put them into combat, and they're going to break. Ukrainians can't maintain them. That's an issue. And we can go on and on and on. And so I think I'm on the same page with these people, except when I say $40 billion. Because you know what happens when you have $40 billion worth of equipment? When it breaks, you throw it away and you bring in the next piece. You don't care. Not only that, much of the equipment that they're talking about now is not the old stuff. That was our second phase of arming the Ukrainians. We went from giving them hundreds of millions of dollars of light weapons to saying, oh my God, we've got to up the ante, but we can't be seen as being too provocative to Russians, so we're going to give them old stuff. And we had to do it quickly. So we rushed the training, we gave them the old stuff, and I went, I'm not too worried about that either. Not a big deal. I also believe the Russians would be very good at interdicting this stuff, that when it came in, they had great intelligence, they would find it, they would blow it up before it got to the battlefield. Then a couple things were happening. One, the stuff started appearing on the battlefield in a meaningful way. And when I mean meaningful, it's killing Russians. So have an impact. We were wrong. They're killing Russians. Not
Now, let me let me let me address those couple of points. One, the point about 40 $53 billion being more than the Russian budget over for the whole year. Let's remember the U.S. military budget for a year is around 700 billion plus actually, 700 plus billion. Russia is around 43 billion a year. Yet Russia is at parity militarily with the US. And in some cases, when you come to hypersonic weapons, they are even more than the US because the US hasn't even been able to develop hypersonic weapons, let alone field them with military. Russia has this all in operations with their military already. So this guy is trying to say that because in 5 months Ukraine got 53 billion and Russia's whole military stuff is 43 billion. So somehow that is a game changer. How? Makes no sense. Russia is on parity with the US, who is 700 billion. So at the least, around 650 billion more than Russia, yet it's on parity. And they are the source of building stuff. Ukraine has no capability to fix this stuff, rebuild anything, and they're getting 53 billion in 5 months. So apparently that's big deal. Let's look at the 53 billion. 20 billion of that is going to defense contractors to replenish US stock. That's the first thing we must understand. Another 8 billion is going towards, I think, humanitarian aid. Some 5 billion is going to Ukrainian budget. Some other ones now going to more weapons and stuff. But let's just say all 53 billion go to weapons, right? Ukraine had a lot of those weapons. 440 some multiple launch rockets were destroyed. How many are we going to bring with this 53 billion? 1,700 artillery were destroyed. 3,300 tanks were destroyed. So let's say Ukraine get some. To date, 118 howitzers, the M777 were sent. I said to bring the HIMARS. How many HIMARS to bring it in? Which are the multiple launch rockets. They're bringing them in. 400 was destroyed. So the Russians would destroy them again. And then when the Russians destroy them again, so Ukraine said they got money, they can go buy more. So then the Russians destroy them again. He now make the statement that those because they're killing, those things are killing, they're making it to the battlefield and they're killing Russians, so they are impactful. Knowing fully well that when we say they're not making impact, it's not about the fact that they kill Russians. Hey, if a Ukrainian rifle kills a Russian with a bullet, if you're looking at impactful to be that, then I guess all Ukrainian weapons are impactful. What we're talking about is the impact on the battlefield to see that in operational warfare, see how it's changing the map. That's not happening. If you're just looking at the fact that they're killing Russians, and Scott knows this. So when you try to talk like this, where he pretends like he doesn't know this becomes a problem and the reason why people impugn his motives. On day 4, Russia announced their casualties were around 400 men dead. Okay, that was before the M777 was getting on the battlefield. So apparently that was impactful too. The funny thing is, the weapons that we know are working for Ukraine happens to be the weapons that they already had. The weapons that were taking planes down, that would shoot some planes down, happen to be their own stock weapons that they had before. Not anything that was not the things that were sent, because generally the things that were sent were trash. And to the extent that Ukraine has to ban the military from speaking ill about those weapons. So now Scott doesn't know that this impact is not affecting the battlefield. You look on the map, Ukraine's not gaining.
Not in numbers large enough to change the ultimate outcome. But when you're killing the enemy, you're doing something right. And from the Ukrainian perspective, we're giving them the ability to kill Russians, which means that you're disrupting the Russian flow of action, you're
How?
disrupting their operations, you're forcing them to change what they were doing. So that's going to lengthen the conflict. And the longer this conflict on, we come to the third phase of rearmament, because now we're giving the Ukrainians the good stuff, top of the line stuff.
What?
Thanks to Lend-Lease and this money, they can buy brand new equipment, the same stuff the U.S. Army's getting. Fact is, they have priority over the U.S. Army now. So they're getting the brand new stuff, the good stuff, and they're not doing the train-the-trainer stuff anymore. They're going to Germany and Poland and getting 40-day training courses, 60-day training courses. And remember, this isn't a raw recruit we're talking about. We're taking a professional Ukrainian soldier who's already been through basic training, advanced training, and combat, more combat than any American's seen in terms of real combat. And we're taking them and we're giving them 40 days of intensive training on how to use a specific piece of equipment in a war they already understand. So they already are able to envision how they want to use it, what the threats are, et cetera. That's a long time for them to get better. So now we look at this again. I don't believe that.
Now remember, this guy is talking as if the Russians are just sitting there. They're just static. All these things are happening. The Russians ain't doing nothing. They're not prepared for this. Remember now, he's already contradicted himself. In the article, as he wrote it, pretty much it looks like the Russian was not prepared at all for this eventuality. But then on this, his response here, he went against that. The Russians were prepared. What they did in Kiev was planned because we just didn't know their plan was. And that means we still don't know. The US is still guessing their plan, right? So apparently now these guys, mind you, the most combat effective forces of Ukraine are on the eastern front, the east, and they are getting destroyed. Apparently, they have taken some. I don't know where they got them from. Okay, let's say the guys from the west take them and send them to Germany 40, 60 days, and they're going to learn stuff to NATO standards, and they're going to come in, and they're going to be these 50-foot tall soldiers that will destroy the Russians. How? Yeah, how?
Changes the outcome on the battlefield because it's too little, too late. It's not going to be enough. But what it's going to do is lengthen this war. So now we come back again, what I said about the special military operation. It ain't war. It was a special military operation conceived at a time when they were dealing with a finite number of Ukrainian forces equipped to a certain standard, receiving a certain amount of military assistance, primarily in the form of light missiles, with
Okay, I would stop here on listening to Scott Ritter's stuff because it is very long. But this is another assumption that is not founded in fact that the Russians didn't know that the US was going to do all this extensive training and send more weapons to the Ukrainians. It's a lie. It's plain out lie. Maybe Scott is forgetting that the U.S. already stated and they warned Russia that they're going to make Ukraine Afghanistan. What does that mean to the Russians? That they want to delay, to lengthen the war. And how they will lengthen the war? By sending more arms and by training Ukrainians to go and kill Russians in there. So you're assuming then that after hearing all of that, the Russians went into battle thinking, oh, it's just a finite amount of numbers and it's just these old weapons that they're using. That makes no sense. It is this type of thing, this lack of logic to follow the analysis that have people impugning your character, Scott. Right? Why you turn 180 degrees, I don't know, but you started with one analysis, you went against it. So far in here, you have now gone back to the first analysis, but still at the same time making conclusions that is in line with your 180-degree turn. Why wouldn't people say that Scott Ritter maybe he turned because he got touched somehow, whether financially or whatever reason? Yeah, I'm not saying that. I don't know that. I don't know why you changed. It could be that you listen too much to CNN stuff because in this particular stuff, and maybe later on I will do a second part of this. He said that Ukraine is getting tactical real-time intelligence to launch to sink Russian ships and then to 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 kill Russian generals by name. These are talking points from Ukraine. They are manure, Ukrainian manure that he's espousing. He himself acknowledged that only two Russian generals were killed. There were not 12 before. He himself, Scott himself. And the thing with the Moskva, we all know now that it probably wasn't a Ukrainian anti-ship weapon that hit the Moskva. Because why? Do they have only one? Because apparently they're not asking for harpoons. So the speculation here that it was Ukrainian anti-ship that hit weapons that hit the Moskva and sank the Moskva, that's not born in fact because we don't even know. Even the U.S. don't even know. So the Russians say that it was fire on board. Moskva was very old, so that's plausible too. Or it could have been mines. But if the Ukrainians are not asking for harpoons, not that they will help. So this is him spitting Ukrainian manure that the Ukrainian general staffs claim that the CIA gave them intelligence to kill Russian generals by name. They even said that they had gotten Gerasimov, the chairman, the general staff chairman of Russia military, and it turned out to be a lie. So the problem with Scott's stuff is that he's spouting Ukrainian manure, something that he went against before with no justification, no logic leading back to why those conclusions. So the problem is on you, Scott. Let me go to another stuff and show you what I think the Russian plan is. And again, I'm speculating. Scott is speculating. The U.S. is speculating. Russian operational security has been awesome, top notch. The U.S. does not even know the Russian general that is in command. They are assuming that a particular general from the East was in charge. Well, the Russians are using people from the Central and the Eastern. I'm sorry, they thought that it was some general from the West, but the Russians using people from the Central and Eastern military district. So they don't even know that. So what is Scott talking about? This people impugning your motives comes from the lack of explanation, logical explanation. That's where it comes from. Here is my own speculation of what the Russians are doing, and so far is borne out from from the facts that have happened and what President Putin have stated before. Right. So one of the thing is that Ukraine, a lot of the cities in the east of Ukraine. Let me actually go back and get another map. So this is Ukraine. This is the east. Let me get another map. Yeah, quickly. Um, Looking for. All right, this is a map of Ukraine, and these areas in pink was Ukraine before. I'm sorry, was Russia before. These areas here in pink, and I also believe actually Dnipropetrovsk, which is this area, was also part of Russia before that was added to Ukraine. A lot of different areas were added to Ukraine over time, right? So this area here, President Putin mentioned that the Ukrainians said they wanted to decommunize Ukraine. All right. So he said, okay, since you guys say you want to decommunize Ukraine, let's do it properly. So the Russians only talk about, so when he said, let's do it properly, I believe the Russians going to take all these areas here. Luhansk and Donetsk, we all know for sure they're going to take it. But the Russians have come across and taken Kherson. They have taken most of Zaporizhia as well. And we know they're going to go for Nikolaev and they're going to go for Odessa. Now, they have to go for Odessa because of Transnistria. They want that connection so Transnistria will not be threatened. All right. So that means they're going to have to go this direction. Now, whether they will go for Kharkov, I don't know yet. But they have everything in their hand. They have defeated Ukraine to the point that Ukraine cannot launch operational level counteroffensives. So when they get done with the Donbass, they take the time, they get done with Zaporizhia, capture the whole Zaporizhia. Maybe they will go straight for Dnipropetrovsk, capture those areas, because when they capture Dnipropetrovsk, that gave another area where they can use to go after Kharkov from. But then I think they've been softening Nikolaev lately, so they might go into Nikolaev and then to uh, 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 go into Odessa. Remember, when they have secured these areas, they now have more men to release onto again defeat in detail. They now have more men to release to go after other areas. Right. So let's get rid of this map and come back to this bigger map here. So what did the Russians do? Right. This Ukraine, what did the Russians do? The Russians went, they made sure with their operations, they eliminated they schedule they set up the battlefield for the east for them to do what they want to do on the east. Ukraine has built a defense, a deep defense, or defense in depth, as some people would say. They have built those deep defense so that the Russians are, as Scott Ritter told you, they are dismantling them piece by piece. Now, Russia went into this war knowing a couple of things. One, the US was going to train Ukraine, was going to continue training Ukraine to lengthen the war, was going to continue giving Ukraine weapons to lengthen the war. They didn't go into it thinking, oh, there's only going to be those javelins and stuff that the US will give, and that would be it. And that's all that the U.S. would do. They didn't go in there thinking like that. So, so as a result, what the Russians did is they created a force that could deal with the situation we're in. They would be in a longer war, but they're not using all of the capabilities, not having to spend all of the money to and deal with the situation. So that amount of troops that they're using, if you notice, Russia does training every year, multiple training every year. They usually a couple 100,000 men in training. That's what's happening here. They they now have a casualty level that they can live by, and it's even reducing further day by day. They will cycle in all of these guys. They will cycle in all of these units from Russia, and those guys will get trained up. It will be like a training operation. That's why they're taking the time. Now, is the war going to lengthen because Ukrainians keep coming to die? Sure. They feel in against the U.S. They were brave, and they kept coming. They were brave and dedicated, but they kept dying. And sure, it didn't lengthen the war much, but it lengthened the war some. They didn't have constant supply of them. They didn't have people to train them outside for them to come in. So that's why it didn't last long. But the Ukrainians have. So they will last long, but it's only going to last long that they're going to keep getting killed. Now the thing I'm going to ask you, does Ukraine have the stomach to stay dying like that at that rate of 1 battalion a day? For how long would they do that? Russia did not go in there expecting 1 month stop. This is speculation from the US. This is the US ascribing to Russia what they didn't ascribe for themselves. Ascribing goals to Russia and time frame to Russia that they didn't ascribe for themselves. Scott Ritter knew this. All of a sudden he doesn't, but he knew this before. So that's why Russia is taking its own time. And Russia suspect even more than just NATO training these people. Russia still went into this war thinking the worst, that NATO, after supplying all these weapons and all these trainings and these guys getting killed, that NATO might come in with their own military. Russia didn't go in there thinking, say, oh no, they're afraid of us. Though Scott Ritter admitted that before that NATO is not ready for war with Russia. Russia didn't go in there assuming that, because that's not what you do when you're planning for a military offensive. You go there expecting that the other person will do all that they need to do to be able to win. So you go there with the expectation it's going to be a long, bloody fight, and you plan for the worst. And that's what the Russians did. Could the Russians have hoped that the Ukrainians would give up after a few weeks? Sure. But that's not what they planned for. So to say that, it's just wrong. He knows that you don't plan war like that. So when he's saying that, these are why people are looking at it, are looking at him side-eyed and wondering what's gotten into you. All of a sudden, your analysis don't have logic to follow them. So the U.S., if the U.S. thought this was going all in their favor, why would they be asking for Russia to stop? They're the ones asking for Russia to end the conflict now so that Russia will get a strategic defeat. And Russia said no, because for Russia, this will end when they achieve their objectives. And the Russians keep saying that all of their objectives, that means demilitarization and denazification. So it doesn't matter how many new weapons and new heavy brigades that Scott Ritter thinks the West is going to put in Ukraine from the West, the Russians is planning to destroy them. And if it's going to take 10 years for that to happen, they would do it because the type of military that they got to deal with the issue, the number of men that they got to deal with the issue and that can deal with the issue effectively is not debilitating. It's not debilitating. It does not destroy their economy. That's why they are not mobilizing. Now, if if Poland wanted to send their own regular forces in, oh, then that would be something. Scott Ritter also made a comment that Poland sent Poland recruited 15,000 is recruiting 15,000 men to fight in Ukraine, and they sent 2 battalions of those men into Ukraine to do what? It's not even the Polish military. So they are coming in. They will go to the east, and they will go to the east, assuming they're bringing those weapons so that they will go to the east. They will go to the east and they get destroyed. They have no air power. They will get destroyed there. So how is that going to do anything? How is that a game changer? Go get trained, take some time off, come back, get killed. What is Scott Ritter talking about? Yeah. Well, anyways, yeah, Scott, your logic doesn't flow. And you said you're okay with that if people disagree with you. I'm not impugning your character as to why. But the reason why people were impugning your character is because your logic doesn't flow. And now they're contradicting themselves. You said one thing when the war started, you said another thing in that your article, and on your response today, what you said in your response contradicted what you said in your article. And yet you're still trying to make those same conclusions without any support. So that's why people are impugning your character because it's looking like you are being very smart in trying to change your view on there without giving the logic behind it. Logic that makes sense. All right. Anyway, thank you guys. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, and let me say thank you to all those people that stuck with me so far, and we're trying to get there. You see, Billy Bob there. he's he's as unseasoned as I am, and so we come with substance. We don't have to start. So forgive us. We will get there eventually. But thank you.